SCP-6183. Here's a question. If the SCP Foundation was given the chance to simply erase all of the anomalies it is tasked with studying and containing, would they do it? After all, one of the Foundation's primary goals is maintaining normalcy, and deleting all of the anomalies causing disruption in the world would certainly aid, if not completely accomplish that goal, no matter how much they talk about researching or containing them. Now, if you were to ask this question to, say, the Global Occult Coalition, the answer would be obvious. But the Foundation is obviously much different on where it stands on that matter, and in how they actually delete anomalies when that is genuinely needed. In the context of SCP-6183, deleting anomalies means something entirely different than simply neutralizing. Neutralized anomalies are simply anomalies that are no longer anomalous, either because they are dead or simply just changed. Deleted anomalies no longer exist, as they have been completely erased from reality. At the start of the article, the first line of text is literally, "This article has been marked for deletions." Because of this, large portions of this article are extremely corrupted or deleted entirely, leaving out a lot of important info that would be useful for actually deciphering what this means. However, you can still piece together some sort of picture based on what's left. We're first given the special containment procedures, as with almost every anomaly in the Foundation. And they read, as SCP-6183 does not exist entirely within our accessible portion of this phase space iteration, the efficacy of ongoing containment efforts cannot currently be determined. An effective medium of oversight and containment is necessary and must be implemented as soon as possible, despite any perceived and all perceived benefit provided by SCP-6183's existence. The description section of this article is utterly useless, having been scrubbed from the article entirely, with the only photo being of an ominous-looking staircase. However, the first addendum, the anomaly's discovery, is completely intact, which gives us a somewhat decent idea of what this description might have been pertaining to at one point. The first addendum reads, SCP-6183 was discovered following investigation into a worsening database issue wherein entire sections of deleted the memory space cannot properly be overwritten. The Records and Information Security Administration research into these corrupted sectors revealed a perpetual backup of deleted archival data being held in a clandestine Foundation server, SCP-6183-A, reportedly owned by a Department of Deletions located on Site 19's 48th sublevel, which does not exist. SCP-6183 receives approximately 1% of SCP files that are removed from the main archive, regardless of whether the device has internet access or electricity, such as when placed within a Faraday exclusion field. Nearly all observed SCP-6183-A1 instances have been heavily corrupted, often to the point of inaccessibility. However, close examination of individual instances has revealed apparent messages concealed within. The other lot of this discovery are completely deleted, but at one point contained a few message logs, which I'm not really sure what they would have contained. The next two addenda have also been deleted, skipping us all the way to addendum 4, which is from a decommissions log meeting, which is a log from a decommissions meeting with 058, Dr. Bold, and Petrochow all present. Dr. Petrochow opens the meeting with the perfunctory thanks and the kind of grim calm we get used to in rooms where protocol and catastrophe meet. He expects the usual turnout, but Dr. Bold immediately pushes back, as he thought the briefing would be for the entire council. 8 explains that the higher-ups are thin on the ground at the moment, juggling multiple crises at the same time. Dr. Reinders undercuts any pretense of humor by noting a few of the crises are literally on fire. Dr. Bold mutters a frustrated aside about climate change, setting the overall tone. Petrochow gets straight to the point. He slides a stack of papers across the table and lays out the numbers. The anomaly discovery rates have surged by over a 44% increase over the last decade. 8 confirms the anecdote everyone already feels in their bones. The days when the Foundation could open a dozen containment slots and a quarter are gone. Now they're filling what used to be months of work in a single day. This tale isn't just administrative. It's essential, as the Foundation is no longer keeping pace with the emergent weirdness. The data are beginning to look like a trend rather than noise. Reinders weighs in with the usual technicalities. Anomalous phenomena tend to propagate. Non-Euclidean geometries warp the surroundings. Thaumaturges teach their techniques to people who weren't anomalous before. Anomalous fauna breed, hybridize, and mutate. And a snow reality bender could rend the veil over a weekend and days in ways that are staggeringly disruptive. Layer onto that an uptick in unauthorized thaumaturgy and the sudden proliferation of hive minds and free ports, and Reinders warns they're heading towards what he calls an anomalous baby boom. Left unchecked, he says this pattern could cascade into an NMK class end of normalcy scenario, the sort of worst class the Foundation contingency plans about, as this means that normalcy is entirely broken. Practicalities follow the dread. Dr. Bullitt says the only thing that might hold on term is decommissioning, removing or neutralizing anomalies entirely, but that option is expensive, dangerous, and increasingly unreliable. The room runs through the cost drivers, specialized equipment, bespoke protocols, the heavy risk process itself to exacerbate an anomaly, and the downstream nightmare of disposal. Reinders compares the achromatic abatement, the disposal of anomalous byproducts, to radioactive waste handling and losses, and uses the comparison. Anomalous waste is worse. Every entity needs a custom end-of-life strategy. Decommissioning success rates have dropped by over 25% in 3 years. In short, it's getting harder to kill these weird things, and the consequences of failure are currently rising. Petrikow points to the cultural dynamics to explain that part of the decline. The longer the Foundation has been active, the more opportunity anomalous groups and sympathetic cultural cells have to study, adapt to, and defend against Foundation tactics. Related anomalies and organized countermeasures are evolving. What used to be predictable containment vectors are now being subverted entirely. 8's face is the same flat, carefully controlled mass it always is in the room, starts talking about countermeasures the Foundation to deploy in response: disinformation, mimetic agents, and covert research projects. Someone slides a spreadsheet. Country remedies and budgets are on the table, but the conversation is still very much about the triage versus strategy. How much it can spend, and how fast without creating worse problems. Then the meeting fractures. Mid-briefing, there is a small impossible moment where a sheet of paper is handed to 8 by a disembodied hand. The recording captures a stunned silence, as Bolt blurts out that he just saw a severed limb deliver a document and vanish. 8, composed but alarmed, presses the in-table button for immediate mimetic inspection and calls for a cognito hazard team. Whatever mail the Foundation just received might contain a mimetic latch or another form of mental contamination. The meeting that began with Citizen's budget ends with the old, ever-present reminder that against the anomalous reality and paperwork can break in the same breath. The next log comes from Conference Room 104 inside Site 17 between supposedly the same entity from the previous log and a researcher. The entity referred to as deleted appeared unexpectedly, and the researcher reacted with shock naturally, screaming and stumbling over a counter. The entity attempted to calm her, apologizing for its outburst and asking if the message had been received. The researcher was unable to process the situation, gave a panicked and confused response. The entity looked around the room, remarking that it must have overshot, and inquired about the current time. Upon being told it was approximately 11 in the morning, and asked for confirmation that Conference Room 104 was located beneath their position. The researcher gave rough directions to it, after which the entity acknowledged their help, said goodbye and abruptly demanifested, its head then vanishing from sight. The next log also occurs in Site 17's Conference Room 104, instead of being between Dr. H. Genevieve from the Ethics Department and the entity. The entity thanked Dr. Genevieve for speaking with them. Genevieve replies that a floating head occupying her interview room is driving away your recruits and that her department is already understaffed. The entity notes that they rarely get any full faces through, usually just limbs, and asks if she received the message. Genevieve confirms receipt of the correspondence, but says she doesn't understand its relevance. As she rereads the note, a hand materializes to scratch the entity's nose before vanishing. Genevieve points to a line on the note labeled "Query Denied," in which the entity refuses to explain, saying that they cannot answer that. Not yet. When Genevieve attempts to dismiss the situation as not her problem, the entity objects to her tone, reminding her that they came specifically for her and assume risk to do so. The entity then attempts to describe the issue. The information in question hasn't gone anywhere and is nonetheless inaccessible. Its component parts endure and are suffused with extreme pain and hatred, streaming, burning, unending, culminating in a fragment of garbled glyphs on the recordings. Genevieve insists this is the other side of the barrier and should be handled by the entity's own department. To which the entity replies that they cannot do more than Genevieve's people must change. They cannot do more and that Genevieve's people must change. The recording then falls to silence as Dr. Genevieve's mouth is deleted. The entity asserts that she lacks the authority to make the decision and ends with a quiet admonition. No need to yell. The next log is also supposedly in Site 17's 104th conference room, but the information is corrupted, so I can't be exactly sure. But it does occur between Genevieve and the entity. A recorded interview between Genevieve and the entity rapidly devolves from a formal Q&A to a sequence of surreal and disjointed manifestations. The entity laughs at the premise of being interviewed and invites questions, alternately evasive and coy. When asked about its origins, the entity speaks in abstract terms: equal opposite forces and a home in white space, a sort of unoccupied alt space-time that, together within Blackbox junk, forms what is called database. Physical transformations punctuate the conversation. The entity's head melts and reforms. A 2-meter cephalopod like tentacle spasms. The tentacle then becomes half a mass of perler beads, which scatter inertly across the floor while its limbs materialize and manipulate objects. The entity gives contradictory childhood memories. Central Nebraska, Leeds, Pensacola, Perth, each recalled with visceral detail from which until it convulses, vomits salt water, and then clutches its head as if it's reliving drowning. It claims to have many birthdays and to inherit or contain others' first memories. When Genevieve presses about deletions and who deleted them, the entity repeatedly responds with "Query Denied," and then falls silent. Attempts to elicit clarity are met by castrated eradications, multiple lines of deleted in the transcript until the interview is abruptly terminated, with the final line being, "Deleted is deleted." The next addendum has been deleted entirely. One after that is not in much better shape, being extremely corrupted and nearly impossible to read. However, there is some information that we can deduce from it, even with its extremely corrupted state. It says that SCP-6183-B is a range of phenomena affecting transitional passageways such as hallways and stairwells located within the Foundation infrastructure across the planet. The next part gets extremely corrupted and garbled. Something describes something which causes an unknown quantity of these structures to spontaneously their interiors become lost. As a result, the number of potential casualties and unusable spaces up to and including entire blank of secure facilities is unknown. In addition, the rate of manifestation and the total area of space can each encompass have been shown to increase something, which is unreadable because this part is entirely corrupted. We are then given a testing log of a new subvariant referred to as SCP-6183-C. The foreword is extremely corrupted and impossible to read, but the tests themselves are more so intact. The subject of the first test is referred to as Anomalous Item 1-7, which was successfully deleted. Dr. Bold notes, typically this would be the last sort of thing we need decommissioned, but being both indestructible and utterly harmless, it was a perfect initial test subject. All in all, a pretty promising first step. Also, by indestructible lamp, I don't think this is SCP-4005 that they're referring to. I thought this too when I was first reading the article. Yeah, apparently it's not the same thing. So it's kind of confusing. The next 28 tests have been deleted, skipping all the way to test number 029, with the subject SCP-352, which was also successfully deleted. Dr. Bold notes, we have no reason to believe that SCP-6183-C wouldn't work on living subjects, but it's still good we have confirmation. It then skips to test number 044, with the subject SCP-6333. Subject was successfully deleted. Deletion event retroactively reveals that 12 Foundation personnel outside of temporary observation post 3333 have been covertly killed and replaced by SCP-3333-1 instances. Dr. Bold notes that even though SCP-6183-C utilizes Foundation documentation to do something to its targets, that something is currently corrupted and impossible to read, it was able to identify several SCP-3333-1 instances that the anomaly's researchers were entirely ignorant of. It's too soon for certainty, but this potentially supports Dr. Genevieve's theory that SCP-6183-C attacks its targets on a conceptual level. It then skipped all the way to test number 81, the subject being simply called the Beast That Endures. Subject was successfully deleted. 6 hours later, an entity known as the Devourer of Hearts reappears in the cave system somewhere in China, where SCP-553 is contained, whereupon it proceeds to breach containment. In the same instant, all known SCP-553 instances vanish, both from the cave system and the chamber in Site-37, where 125 of these instances were being held for extermination. Following an entity known as the Shard-Plated Abominations returned to containment approximately 16 hours later, it is discovered that its scales now possess a crystalline structure, that a set of Lepidopterous wings have grown from its back. Dr. Genevieve notes, could the spawn of Azib have reasserted itself by overriding another anomaly? Considering the potential implications relating to SCP-6183-C's effects, further study is warranted. The next test is pretty interesting. Test number 082. The subject being an entity known as the subject being that whose hate flows an undying torrent. Result: an entity known as the Daughter of Disgust is successfully deleted, and travel to somewhere is subsequently prohibited by Protocol 4000 SU. All life forms within are considered lost. The note section is pretty interesting. Dr. Bold notes, and I quote, "This was a mistake. All proposals to delete that fucking lizard will henceforth be rejected. No good can come from following this path, if one even exists anymore." Now, that lizard is quite obviously SCP-682, which is already covered in admonition in the first episode, Termination Attempt. It then skips all the way to test number 112, to an SCP known as SCP-Y, which was also successfully deleted. Dr. Genevieve notes, in using SCP-6183-C to decommission a purely mathematical anomaly, we have definitive proof that it operates within conceptual space. The exact nature of that space, however, is yet to be determined. The next addendum has also been deleted, also. We are then given addendum, We are then given a Blackbox incident log. The foreword is also extremely corrupted, but there are only a few words I can actually deduce from this. That being subsequent, high priority, distress call, androgynously, develop, overwritten, and emergent properties. Incident 001. A non-Euclidean architectural anomaly is discovered in the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California, USA. The Foundation's automated classification system assigns it as the vacated destination of SCP-3333. 3 days after its manifestation, a window manifests in SCP-3333's basement that displays a view of the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest in Washington, USA. This prompts further examination of the anomaly, which reveals that a locked trapdoor has been appearing at the ceiling of SCP-3333's top floor. Realizing the rapidly forming similarities between SCP-3333 and SCP-3333-D, Dr. Bull utilizes SCP-6183-C to delete SCP-3333 before any -1 instances manifest. Dr. Bold notes, I was hoping that deleted anomalies partially overriding one another would be limited to that fiasco with the undying reptile, but this test seems to imply otherwise. Of course we wouldn't be that lucky. RISA has been instructed to modify the SCP classification algorithm to stop further SCPs from being given the previously held numbers of deleted SCPs. Hopefully this should prevent further incidents of this in the future, or at the very least consider it a temporary workaround. The next two test logs now exist, and it skips all the way to incident number 0004. The summary section has been deleted entirely, but the notes section is still intact. Dr. Bold states, something's very wrong with the Foundation's database. Edits are reverting, files are corrupting or deleting themselves at random, redactions and black boxes appear where vital information was present only yesterday. At this point, there's a good chance that incident log won't even make it to the actual SCP-6183 documentation. We're rapidly careering towards an internal communications blackout unlike anything we've ever seen before. At this moment, 9 secure facilities are considered inactive or dark, with 13 others perilously close to the same fate. It then skips the next several thousand tests, going all the way to Blackbox Incident 1416. The summary is deleted, and the only text present is a note section, reading, "This is how it ends, isn't it?" The next few test logs have been deleted, or the next few addendums have been deleted. But the final piece of text in this article is a research station Menno-sign exploration. The forward and parties present section has also been corrupted, with the only person being actually documented is a D class referred to as D-6183. It reads, in order to further Foundation understanding of SCP-6183, an exploration into the sub-basement tunnel claimed to be the location of Research Station Menno-sign was authorized. One D-Class personnel, D-6183, was equipped with a shoulder-mounted camera, headlamp, and one long-range, 0.5 kilometer, 2,250 lumen flashlight, and secondary audio-visual recording communications hardware, before being attached to a recovery tether. D-Class was then directed down the path in Site 19's non-existent 48 sublevel via instructions provided by deletions agents. The transcript is below. D-6183's body cam comes online and comms are established. The subject is briefed for ingress to Research Station Menno-sign. Video shows Site 19 maintenance tunnels transitioning abruptly into residential-style stairwell and laminate flooring leading down to the 48th sublevel. Lighting on the feed cuts off sharply beyond a few meters. The subject remarks on a domestic appearance and a cold draft while descending. D-6183 reports a low hum that is perceptible as a tactile vibration rather than an audible tone. Sensation is described as thicker than air, vibrating on his chest and inhalation. The subject notes an impressive silence otherwise, including absence of tinnitus. At the bottom of the stairs, a large, unfurnished carpeted room is entered. The ceiling exceeds visual range, and frosted glass fixtures contain no wiring or bulbs. Around a corner, the camera captures a staircase bathing upwards in a bright, undulating light. This light is unaffected by the subject's flashlight. D-6183 continues, noting the tether and safety line before describing escalating physiological effects. Communications intermittently degrade. D-6183 reports head pain and paresthesia. Then observes his hand transforming into candle wax with a wick in the middle finger. He detaches the finger and reports no bleeding or sensation. The recovery tether is activated. The cable is later recovered fully attached to the harness. But D-6183's immediate status becomes unclear. Shortly thereafter, the subject reports that the upper half of his body is gone and describes a further corporeal transformations: waxen material, fettuccine, temporal distortion, and perception of countless fragmented selves and other pieces surrounding a black clouds. He explains the inability to leave the hallway without losing more of himself and characterizes his assignment as message delivery. The audio was shortly lost after. Post-explorationary analysis recovers heavily corrupted frames. D-6183, birth name deleted, is classified as missing in action. Subsequent attempts at contact have produced inconsistent results. The very last piece of this article is a recovered image, and if you open it, the rest of the file disappears entirely.